landfall application 12-07, Southern Salvage, 54 Valley Road, lot 40701, lot 41.
Anything that's
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Joe Sordillo from McElroy, Deutsch, Mulvaney & Carpenter here on behalf of the applicant. I believe this evening, as was agreed to at the last hearing, is going to proceed with the public comment on the application. And at the January meeting, we're going to proceed with the cross-examination of the applicant's planner based upon the rebuttal report and closing arguments.
Correct.
So at this evening, I have no witnesses to present and will just be here to listen to the public comment.
All right. We're listening to public comments, and the only thing that I ask is if someone makes a comment about something that someone else doesn't be repetitious about it. If you are, you could refer to the first comment, say that you agree with it, disagree with it, whatever. So anyone who has comments can come up to the microphone.
Just for the record, Mr. Chairman, put my appearance on the record. Douglas Kins appearing on behalf of the objectors, Mr. and Mrs. Robert Wolf.
Thank you. Please state your name and your address and spell your last name.
Current address?
Yes.
My name is Karen Bianco, and I currently reside at 1 Norman Lane, Succothon, New Jersey. Last name, you want me to spell?
Yes, please.
It's B-I-A-N-C-O.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
B-I-A-N-C-O. Okay?
And it's Karen, K-A-R-E-N?
It's actually C-A-R-O-N. Growing up, I lived with my parents, Arlene and Bill Shoulder, at 32 Valley Road in Rockaway, New Jersey. In 1985, I was about 6 years old. I lived with my parents on Valley Road until 1999 when I was 20 years old. Growing up, my bedroom window was adjacent to Valley Road. We didn't have central air, and therefore my bedroom window was open about 6 months out of the year. It was very quiet. As a child, I rarely saw or heard any 18-wheeler tractor trailers on our street, or any loud trucks for that matter. It was always very quiet and peaceful. Furthermore, there were absolutely no disturbing noises coming from the Southard site at that time. I would regularly walk and ride my bike to and from my friends' houses on Valley Road without any reservation or concern about large trucks driving up and down the street. In high school, I would walk from my house up to the top of Green Pond Road to catch the bus, and I was never in fear at that time of being run off the road by a large 18-wheeler. The Southard Salvage was a non-issue even as late as 1999, as long as I've lived there. And today, however, things are very different. On Friday, April 24th, 2015, I needed to bring my husband to a 3 o'clock dental appointment, and that happened to be right down the street from my parents' house. So because he suffered a back injury and couldn't drive himself, I dropped him off and headed to my parents' house. I happened to be exhausted that day and decided to try to take a nap in my old bedroom before going back to pick him up. Again, the bedroom is directly right off the road, Valley Road. So due to the constant noise of the trucks going in and out of the Southern Salvage site, I was unable to rest, could not fall asleep even with the windows shut. The noise was way too loud and persistent. Back in 1985, and as long as I've lived there, I never had a problem with noise preventing me from sleeping in my own bedroom. The only other thing I'd like to say to support the fact that the present state of the Southern Salvage business is absolutely not harmonious with the neighborhood now is something that relates to my own kids. When we visit my parents' house on Valley Road about once a month, during these visits, sometimes my kids ask if they could ride their scooters or their bikes on the street. And because I fear for their safety, I don't let them do it. Nowadays, it's way too dangerous with all the trucks, and this saddens me because it wasn't like this when I was growing up. Thank you.
Anyone else have any comments?
My name is Angelina Paez, P-A-E-Z. I currently reside at 303 Prospect Street, Belvedere, New Jersey.
Can you repeat that address, please?
303 Prospect Street, Belvedere, New Jersey.
And your first name spelled?
A-N-G-E-L-I-N-A. My name is Angelina Paez. I was 15 when my parents moved to 34 Valley Road in late 2001. This is the year I picked up jogging. My usual route would either be a right out of our house down to the end of Valley and back, or a left out of the house all the way down to Stone Ridge Court and back. I recall very vividly the joy of running and jogging on this beautiful road brought me. I recall my brother, who occasionally joined me, teaching me the proper technique for breathing to maximize endurance. What I do not recall is ever having to worry about trucks or heavy traffic. When I did see the occasional car, it was rarely, if ever, a commercial vehicle. In 3 years of car rides to and from Morris Knolls High School at various times of day, I do not recall trucks or commercial vehicles ever being an issue. After college and a short time in California, I moved back in with my parents, Carol and Juan Paez, in November 2010, and my very first morning back, exhausted from a cross-country road trip, I can recall being awakened by the now familiar clanging that haunts my parents' home. When I asked my mom about it, she just said something to the effect of, I know they've been getting louder and starting earlier. Over the years that I remained at my parents' house, the truck traffic was noticeably heavier, to the point where I could not walk the family dog halfway down Valley Road without 1 to 4 of them passing me. I did not like the idea of running or jogging on the road anymore, so I took to the woods behind our house, and it was then that I really noticed the change in the landscape. My heart sank as I realized that our once beautiful tree line was now marred with ugly metal containers. My place of employment is only 10 minutes down the road, so naturally getting into a car accident on the way from work to my parents' house should be the least of my concerns. However, over the last few years, experience has taught me to fear our once peaceful road, as I was forced onto the side by a speeding truck around the corner up the side of the road in 2011. Terrified by other trucks and commercial vehicles either speeding, tailgating on Lake Denmark from Picatinny, or otherwise failing to observe appropriate road safety for the area. The pain of moving to another state sophomore year, away from my dearest friends and first high school, was lessened for me by the beauty and serenity I found in our home at 34 Valley Road. Now I dread driving down the Valley Road, and family videos are tainted by the sound of crunching metal. You cannot tell me that nothing has changed, because my parents have always chosen homes with their children's well-being taking top priority, and if things were then as they are now, they would not have given our home a second glance. Thank you.
My name is Lori Hockman,
Please spell your last name
Hockman,
and your address.
89 Malapartis Road, Morris Plains, New Jersey.
Would you spell Malapartis, please?
Malapardis.
Thank you.
My family bought property on Valley Road in 1976. They're the house closest to Southard Salvage. It was a beautiful wooded area, and the township required at that time that you had to have at least 2 acres to build there, because the township was interested in retaining the rural charm of that area. It took us a decade to build our dream house because we did everything ourselves and saved for each step. So we moved in 1986. My dad told me that there was a little junkyard at the end of the road. It was a 1-lane winding gravel road, and we never saw or heard anything from the junkyard. My sisters and I all learned to drive on Valley Road. We rarely encountered a car, let alone a big truck. Since then, since 2008 or so, Southard Salvage has built a thundering industrial operation without seeking or receiving permission from Rockaway, and certainly without notifying or considering their neighbors. Tractor trailer loads of scrap and waste come 6 days a week from morning to night, rattling and endangering everyone on that little country lane. And at the site, there is a truck scale, there is piles of debris 35 feet high. There's an industrial cranes, and worst of all, a 650-foot wall of shipping containers. That is the view from my parents' backyard now. They're stacked too high, they're hideous. They did all this without permit, without variance, without inspection, without oversight. So how do we know what they're taking in? The Southard Salvage website tells us that they handle decommissioned chemical and pharmaceutical plants, asbestos, PCB, oil tanks, and contaminated soil. So how would you like that company as your next door neighbor with nobody minding the store, no inspections, nothing? These poor people, the residents, have had to hire a lawyer, a sound expert, planning expert, and they had to pay tremendous expense. And they had the soil and the water tested. And then they had to pay Rockaway Township over $1,000 for every one of these meetings that have been going on for 3 whole years. And $1,000 every meeting just to have the transcripts made or whatever. It's ridiculous. Then all this is for innocent people to have the township enforce their own regulations and their own master plan. This is supposed to be a residential area. This is not what it was like when all of us moved in. You only need to look at photos before and after 2008 or so to see the changes that have been made and to know that no application has been made by Southern Salvage to Rockaway since 1985. It's an absolute outrage.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question of Ms. Hoffman, if I may. Ms. Hoffman, what is the address of the family home?
36 Valley Road.
Okay. And you mentioned that there are debris piles on the Southard site that are 35 feet high, right?
Yes, that's what my dad told me.
Okay.
He is in construction.
I mean,
He's
that's,
estimating.
that's hearsay to begin with,
Well,
so.
whatever, I'm just telling you. But
Mr. Kent, you realize that.
Well, that's why I asked the question. I wanted the source of the information because I was going to expound on it. So, thank you.
Announce to these
My name's
people. Can you hold on one second?
Oh.
Just want to say that any comments that you make, the information that you're using, should only be firsthand information and not information from other people.
That's what we call hearsay, as was just pointed out. This has to be based on your own personal information. Of course, your opinions are relevant, but any information is first based on your own personal knowledge and not what somebody else tells you.
And Mr. Chairman, actually, I apologize for not bringing this up earlier. It just dawned on me myself. I think since this is the public comment period, the witnesses probably should be sworn in as they're making their statements in favor or against the application.
No. These are not witnesses, Mr. Chairman. These are comments from the public. They're not presented as fact witnesses. They're not typically sworn in.
I strenuously disagree. I've handled many land use applications, and every land use application when it comes to the public comment, when they're making comments as to, in statements to the board, whether they're presented by an attorney or not, normally even when they're not, when they're making fact statements to the board, they're sworn in during the public comment period. That is very common. It's what's normally done. So that way, their statements can be given weight by the board. Otherwise, there's no ascertaining as whether what they're saying is fabrication or the truth.
Well, let me indicate what the practice for many, many years, at least as long as I have been associated with the board, is that we do not swear in the public when they give public comments. That's our practice, and I don't believe, unless the board feels otherwise now, that they're going to change the practice for this particular hearing.
It's comments and not testimony.
I understand the board's position, and I respect the board's position, but I just want my objection of record that.
Right.
I
And
believe
counsel,
should be sworn in.
keep in mind whether they're sworn in or not. I mean, it's for the board to evaluate what they have to say in the context of this entire application and hearing. So the fact that they're not sworn in, I don't think is critical to the board determining what weight, if any, to give to their statements and opinions. That's quite a bit different than the persons who testified under oath that are in very, very different situations for the most part to speak of.
I respect the board's position.
Thank you.
My name's Gretchen Clegg, C-L-E-G-G. I live at 16 Iverson Court in Rockaway. David Zimmerman stated in his report, one new subdivision contains 8 dwellings fronting Stone Ridge Court. On occasion, they may hear sounds from the subject property. This is in the section where he talks about harmony with the neighborhood. When David Zimmerman singled out Stone Ridge Court, he didn't seem to understand that many other homes quite far from the Southard site are also affected. Please refer to picture 7 that you previously received. Note the location of Stone Ridge Court, Iverson Court, Grandview Place, and Longview Drive. Many homes on these streets are disturbed by the sounds coming from the site. Tonight you'll hear from several families at these locations. I live on Iverson Court and I'm extremely upset with the present situation because this site does not exist in harmony with the neighborhood as David Zimmerman claims. I moved to Rockaway Township 6 months ago. I moved here from Passaic County for a variety of reasons. I was very careful when selecting a town to raise my children. First and foremost, I moved here for the great school system. We also purchased a home in this town for the peace, tranquility, and beauty of this countryside, and for that we sacrificed the conveniences of the urban area and traveled many more miles to work each day and to shopping stores. However, living on Iverson Court, we've been cheated of the countryside Rockaway Township offers. Due to the operations of the Southard Salvage Yard, we are exposed to loud crashing and banging noises from 6 a.m. to as late as 8 p.m. 6 days a week. After discovering what we're being exposed to on a daily basis, we would sell our home in a heartbeat, but can't do this without suffering a large monetary loss. My husband and I sought out help searching the internet and found a Stop Southard Facebook page created by a group of neighbors who share the same disruptions to their daily lives. I learned that Southard's application for a variance has been pending with the zoning board for more than 3 years, which has cost the homeowners huge out-of-pocket legal fees to prove to the board that Southard Salvage Yard has illegally expanded. As a new homeowner, I don't have the cash for zoning, traffic, and noise experts to prove to you guys that my current living conditions are horrendous. I only have this time now to tell you about my experiences, and I pray that you take it into consideration when voting on this variance. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments?
Good evening. I'm Eleanor Loki, L-O-W-K-E. I live at 2 Grandview Place,
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your last name.
L-O-W-K-E.
Thank you.
I think Gretchen asked you to refer to picture 7. I would also be included on that picture at 2 Grandview Place. You can see that we are not even in the same development as the Southard site. Most people would not believe that homes so far from the site would be affected the way they are. David Zimmerman stated in his report that on occasion, these homes may hear sounds from the subject site, but this statement is completely false. The sound coming from Southard is continuous noise infiltrating onto and into our home. Southard is on our property. We did not invite him. David Zimmerman stated that the metal containers were added to provide a solid sound barrier, but they do not block noise from entering our yard, our deck, our garage, our garden, our living room, our bathroom, our dining room. My husband and I worked very hard to purchase our home in Rockaway. We have a disabled son whose medical expenses have been astronomical and chronic. We paid those bills ourselves. We paid for our house ourselves. Now we find we can't enjoy it. We cannot have guests over to our house. We cannot use our deck to relax after a long work week. We cannot enjoy our yard in peace. One evening, At around 8:00 p.m., the noise was so loud we had to turn the sound up on the television in our living room just to hear the program we were watching. I spoke to the mayor of Rockaway at length about the constant nuisance noise the site generates at all hours of the day and night. I spoke to my neighbors, who have lived in this development for longer than 15 years, and who complain about a complete change in the quality of life in the neighborhood due to the constant, grinding, annoying sound of crashing metal. It is obvious to the residents of our development that this new type of business that Mr. Southard has embarked upon since 2007 is in harmony with an industrial park in Secaucus, New Jersey, not with housing developments in Rockaway, New Jersey. To put it another way, a child's lemonade stand is not a lemonade bottling plant. If my child puts up a lemonade stand on our property today, and I put in a bottling plant on our same property tomorrow, we are still selling lemonade, but it is a different business. The lemonade stand is in harmony with a residential neighborhood. The bottling plant is not. I do not wish to live in Southard Township. I want to live in Rockaway Township. Please consider my plea that Southard's request for a variance be denied. Thank you.
Anyone else have any comments?
My name is Julianne Rocco, R-A-U-C-O, and I live at 5 Grandview Place. Not to be repetitious, I live in the same area as Gretchen and...
What was that address again, ma'am?
5 Grandview Place.
Can you, since you live in the same neighborhood as the prior individual, just give the board, perhaps it might be helpful, some ideas how far you are from the Southern site?
I don't really know. If you saw the picture, if you go up to Green Pond Road, say where from the Southern site is, and you go all the way back up to Green Pond Road, we're very close to Green Pond Road. So I don't know how many feet that is. It's nothing but woods. I never knew Southern was back.
I was looking more for as the crow flies, if you know what I
If
mean.
you look at picture 7 in your package.
Excuse me, sir. You'll have your opportunity. Go ahead.
Can I ask my husband who's with me if he can come up and
Well,
stop
if
and
he's
say how
gonna-
far
he
it
can
is?
come up
He
with-
wasn't going to say anything because he says it's the same as mine, but.
All right, you can proceed with whatever
Okay,
comments.
so I don't know
All right,
how many, but
okay.
it's not
It's
close.
all right.
Okay,
Continue.
I've been a resident and taxpayer of Rockaway Township since 1982, or 1983, sorry. I moved from the White Meadow Lake section in 2003 to the Marcellus section to get to a more rural, quiet area. Prior to 2007, my home was in a quiet, wooded, beautiful area. Every once in a while, I would hear a clang, and it would be more like, what? You know, what was that story? And I had to stop and think about it to try to hear what it was and like listen and not hear it again. Since around 2007, the noise pollution started. I now leave my house at say 7 in the morning, clang, clang, clang. I get home at 4:30 in the afternoon from work, clang, clang, clang. I don't work on Fridays. I hear it all day. No matter what time I leave or come back, the noise is going on. After attending a town meeting, I learned that I can call it and log a complaint if I hear noise before 7 o'clock in the morning. I've been woken up on a few occasions already on Saturday morning, 6:30 in the morning, to not one clang, the whole business is running. And it's clang, 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 and you can't go back to sleep. I've also had the same issue as Eleanor stated, that I had to turn my window, close my windows, and turn on my air conditioning and turn the TV up so I could hear a program that I was trying to watch. I did ask the dispatcher, I said, how late are they allowed to make noise till? She said, till 10 o'clock at night. There's no ordinance that says a business has to stop making noise sooner than people. So, at this point in time, my quality of life has gone down. There appears to be no regard for the neighborhood. Thank you. I wish you, again, like everyone else, I hope that you at least get something stopped here so that it doesn't get worse and it goes back to what it was. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I just confirm that everyone has in their packet photograph number 7 because mine does not.
It's an aerial photograph.
I have
You
it.
have it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Donna Becker, Becker. I live at 15 Longview Drive, which you'll see on photographs number 7. I moved to my home in July of 1994, and we started hearing the noises from the back of our property sometime after 2007. And at first I thought there was a construction project going on, but after about a year I realized there was no construction and it wasn't going to be temporary. So at that point is when I learned of Southard's salvage business. My husband and I have been in the habit of getting up very early in the morning to enjoy a cup of coffee and the quiet morning since we moved there in 1994. Sadly, there were many mornings that we would hear noises from Southard Salvage before 6 in the morning. Not only is the noise constant, but has replaced the beautiful noises of nature, which had led us to purchase our property. Being approximately 1,000 feet, maybe 1,300 feet, I tried to estimate it from a Google map, from Southard's back property line, one might think that the amount of dense woods that lie between the two properties would serve to buffer the noise, yet we're still subject to the constant sounds of crashing metal and equipment from early in the morning to late in the evening. Thank you.
Is there anyone else with comments?
Well, is it pro or con, or is it?
Either way, you
I'll go.
sure.
I'm Tim Harrington, I live on 15 Valhalla Way. I've had a business in town from born here, grown up here, everything, but it's
Your address, sir?
15 Valhalla Way. The speeches all sound great and everything, but if we want to mess with John Southard, who's been here since the 30s, we should shut down Picatinny, Thiokol, Radiation Technology. I sit and hear noises from every place. This is the town we live in. How far do we go back? John Southard's been paying taxes here, employing everybody here, doing work here. Do you like him, hate him? I don't know if I even like him. But the bottom line is the guy's employed. Half of us as kids, he's been in place for work, he pays taxes, people pay taxes up and down these roads. If we're gonna do that, we might as well shut down every place we have. Let's shut down the delis, the restaurants, where does it stop? If they have a problem, they should really call the real estate guy that didn't tell them that there was a scrapyard down the street. Because I know as long as I can remember, they've been running up and down the hills and doing what they're doing. Railroad ties, whatever it is, but I know I hear machine guns and explosives way more than I hear John Southern. Okay, so at the end of the day, if our job as the Rockaway Township Board is to now get rid of, if you need to enforce, that's one thing. But you want to talk about shutting somebody down, that's just totally ridiculous for 5, 10 residents that should have known they lived next to a place. I built a company here and I've been in front of 1 million of these boards. But if you have to enforce and you're speeding or you have trucks, that's a whole different situation. But operating, the business is probably cleaner and better ran than it was when I was a kid. And again, it's employed half of this damn town and done a lot of stuff. So if I've ever needed something done, they did it. So at the same time, if you're gonna mess with him, you better sit down 20 other businesses at this table. Okay? Thanks.
Sir, question for you.
Sure.
Can you just relate where you live in connection with the
I
site?
lived I grew up here my whole entire life. I lived on Halvard Terrace originally.
I'm sorry, what terrace?
I lived on 27 Halvard originally, then I lived on Green Pond Road, so I was a pleasure to hear the trucks up and down too. If I had a problem, I called them up. Most of this could have been settled with probably a couple meetings with themselves. But
I would object to that. That's not fair comment on the operation. We don't need to hear comment from the public as to what should have been settled and what should have been litigated. That's not productive for the board.
That's another $20 for a lawyer. Okay, so with that being said, you call me a smartass.
Yes, I am.
You wasted everybody's time and money in this town. You're just a smartass. Shut the hell up.
Sir, you have to address the board.
I hear you, but we don't need this guy calling me a smartass. I mean, I've been in business. Well, again, you can hate me or like me too, but I hired and fired half the town too. So a lot of people probably hate me or like me. I don't necessarily care if somebody.
Excuse
Oh,
me,
what
the
are you
audience, please
What?
refrain.
Real? I said-
Everybody has a right
Again,
to
at
speak.
the end of the day,
and
I
it
mean,
should
at
be-
the end of
it should be what's said.
At the end of the
Oh,
day.
Mr. Harrington, hold
Yeah.
on. I want to address the audience. Whether you agree or disagree with someone who is speaking to the board, you have a right to do it. Please please refrain from any comments when somebody's speaking. I'm sure when you're up there, if you're up there, you wouldn't want anybody in the audience or any place else up here to be talking and making comments about what you're saying. So please be respectful of the person who's addressing the board, whether you are in favor of what they're saying or not. Thank you.
Again, this has nothing to do with liking or hating of John Southard. I mean, I give it one way or the other. I'm just saying from a situation of a taxpayer, we've lost every business up and down Green Pond Road. My father, when people are out of work, roadway, my dad worked roadway. People complain about cars pulling on. We should shut down the Dunkin' Donuts because there was an accident there yesterday. There's always some reason that somebody can complain and bitch about a business. If it's an enforcement issue, hey, I'm 110%. The guy truck speeding on the road, ticket the guy. If there's loads over it, give him a ticket. That's what we do, we enforce. But you don't have 2 or 3 people, especially a guy like this, dumping down and saying, let's shut down a company. Okay, and it's every town. I own an oil business, so nobody wants it next to their house. Nobody wants to live next to an airport. Well, then don't buy or build a house next to the airport. And people expand, businesses expand, economies expand. But what's happening in Rockaway? We push everybody out. I mean, look at When I was a kid, Thiokol ran jet engines all night long, but we weren't going to shut him down. The machine guns at Picatinny Arsenal went off last night like crazy, and a bomb went off this morning at 6. Mine Hope Rock Products blew up another ridge. This is the life in Rockaway Township. It's a mining town. This is what we do. Okay, but you don't buy and build next to an airport. You don't do any of this kind of thing. So either you want to be a neighbor, he could be a gentleman neighbor. You talk and you do what you do. That's how you fix things. But at the end of the day, if it's enforcement, it's enforcement, and that's it. But you don't try to shut down a guy that's been here since 1930, and you can tell him he can expand or not expand. Okay, so it's as simple as that. We don't stop at John then. If John's gonna have a problem, then we shut down every deli, restaurant. We already shut down half the businesses on the street. We all had our own issues. Jeff Will understands, he was a trucking business, you get it. So this is where I'm at. Again, I can give a crap about John Southard right now. I'm talking about the business itself, how we conduct ourselves. Another one's shut down. We lost not roadway, but we lost, it is roadway. We lost roadway now. We lost the ice cream joint. Everything, just because we have traffic on the road. Okay, then what do? We get non-tax paying stuff like the Christ Church. Should have been a high school by now. We didn't have the balls to take it over. This is the problem with how our board runs. Okay, we just can't shut places down. You manage them. And we want people to hire people. We need people to live here and make money. That's it. That's my opinion. People can hate me for it, but I've built a bunch of businesses. That's life. He's running something, he's out of line, that's it. Okay, thanks.
I have a couple of questions, Mr. Chairman.
One question for me?
Yes, please.
Okay, sure.
You live at 15 Valhalla Way?
Yes, I've left 3 residences in Tulmark.
Excuse me,
Please
speaker.
speak to the
I've lived here for 48 years.
How long have you lived at 15 Valhalla Way?
15 years.
And how far is
And that's-
15 Valhalla
As a
Way?
crow flies, a mile maybe, not even a mile.
And you've certainly lived there since 2007, I take it?
I've lived in Tulmark my entire life.
I can't hear him.
I've lived in Tulmark my entire life.
No, Mike, please. Sure. And I heard you say that you're not against enforcement, correct?
No, I mean, enforcement, if somebody's driving a car too fast, somebody's doing something incorrect. That's fine, that's life. I'm saying is, but the curtailing and screwing with the business because you live next door and you don't like it, that's what I'm against.
Well, are you familiar with the 1985
Mr. Gibbs,
resolution?
I don't think this is proper for cross-examination of objectors. They state their opinion, they state what the facts. I'm not so sure cross-examination is.
And if he wants it.
I mean, if there's clarification
I-
or something, but this is not cross-examination. This individual is not sworn under oath, is given facts and opinion. I'm going to indicate that cross-examination is not proper. If you were a witness under oath, that's different.
I would respectfully
wanna
disagree.
clarify
I'll
something,
certainly
that's
abide
okay.
the board's decision, but cross-examination of individuals from the public who are giving comment for or against, I think is within the province of the
Yeah, but
attorneys.
to try to attack credibility.
I'm not trying to
is-
attack credibility.
If you're asking questions to clarify something, as you did how long he's lived at 15 Valhalla Way, that's something. But other than that, to attack credibility or whatever, I think is improper.
That wasn't my intention to
Okay.
attack credibility. If I could just go a little further with this. Are you familiar with the 1985 resolution that's one of the issues in this case?
I'm not here as a lawyer, I'm not here as anybody, I'm here as person that lives in Lake Tomar.
Right, well, if one of the requests of the objectors was to enforce the requirements of that resolution, you wouldn't be against holding the Southard operation to that kind of enforcement.
I'm not here to be your witness. I'm
Well,
here.
wait a minute, this is cross-examination.
It's
I think,
ridiculous.
I think that question is not proper. I think the part and parcel of what Mr. Harrington is trying to say is, there's noise violations, there's law enforcement, police or whatever, to enforce code violations and things like that. Not, this is the
That's
board
life
to
and
determine
business.
whether or not a variance is proper, whether or not the applicant has followed the directives of the 1985 resolution or not. And if so, or if not, that's the board's determination. I don't think it's proper cross-examination.
Mr. Iskra, you said that it was proper to clarify a statement he made. I want to clarify that he's not against enforcement. He said he
Well,
wasn't.
doesn't matter if
What
I'm
do we
against-
enforce?
Well,
What do we enforce?
It's not my position.
Well, if you want to talk about enforcement, let's talk about what enforcement he's talking about, not the 1985 resolution.
That's
Is he
one of
talking
the-
about enforcement of noise or what?
You asking
Another-
me?
No, I let Mr. Kids ask the question.
I'll go to another question. Who told you that anyone in this room wants to shut the entire operation down? Where'd you get that?
Objection, again, what difference does it make whether he was told that? This is his opinion, okay? And whether he was told something or not is really not relevant.
Mr. Iskra, the opinions that the board hears from members of the public should be valid and well-based, well-founded. Just as if you direct a particular speaker to say, we don't want to hear hearsay because it's invalid, I think I have the
Well,
right to
hearsay goes to
question.
facts, opinions are opinions, okay? He expressed an opinion as objectors have a right to do. Whether he heard it from somebody else and it's his opinion, or whether it's his own opinion, didn't hear anybody from somebody else, what difference does it make?
Well,
It's his opinion.
the opinions that the board hears have to be taken into account by the board in assessing their determination.
And-
If an opinion is not valid or well-founded,
Well, that's
certainly
for
it's something the board
that's
should
for the
know.
board to determine, but your question was, from whom did he hear this from? What difference does it make? It's his
It
opinion.
make-
The board
Big
takes.
sign put on the side of the road.
Oh, hold on.
It
The
makes-
board takes into consideration person's opinion. That's what they're here for, okay? Whether somebody else has an opinion in that nature and he heard it from somebody, what difference does it make? It's his opinion.
Just for the
Counsel,
record.
you wanna?
I would say I absolutely agree. The Objectors Counsel was arguing against even swearing in witnesses, but now wants to be able to cross-examine these witnesses as if they're sworn in, to hold them to a testimony when, as Mr. Isker has explained, at this point, it's giving opinions. It's not giving testimony. So I object to any cross-examining in this manner, because if we're gonna do, if this is the point where the public is gonna give their opinion, it's not gonna be sworn testimony, then that should be how it should be taken.
Just note my objection to the ruling. I will close with this. It has never been my client's position, nor do I believe anyone in the audience's position,
Well, you
to
can't
shut
speak
the
for anybody in the
operation
audience.
down. Well, Mr. Iskra, I want to clarify. You said something needs to be clarified. It's within my province to try and do that.
For
to the
example,
witness.
we clarified how far he lives from the site. We clarified that for purposes of, just to get some idea of putting in perspective. That's a valid question for clarification so that you can put it in perspective as to their facts, and they're saying they hear noise, well, how far they live away? And that's proper question. That's not cross-examination, that's clarification. And I'm sure counsel would agree and had no problem with those clarification questions.
I don't want anyone on this board to be under the misapprehension that my client's position, and I think I can speak for the neighbors based on what I know their sentiments to be, that we want to shut Southard down. That is a misstatement. What we want to do is hold them to the 1985 resolution that authorizes them to operate on that facility. And that requires certain things. That is a huge distinction.
Well, I don't think it was meant to convey that your client, or for that matter, anybody else, necessarily wants the operation shut down.
That
You
was the whole
clarified.
thrust of his
I'm trying
opinion.
to-
That was the whole
listen,
thrust of
okay,
this
sir,
gentleman's
sir.
opinion.
But the scope of what I'm saying is that our business, the way we're running our business in Rockaway, we want to take the name out of it. I'm saying is, it's not just one, it's all the businesses. That's what we have here, the Mount Hopes, the Southards, the Thiokol, the Radies and Technology. This is what we have. If that's the case, if Green Pound Road, the noise, we have a lot of stuff to shut down. We've shut down enough. Enough already, is all I'm saying. That's it, done. Good?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name name is Melissa Lancy, excuse me. I live
Your
at
last name, please?
Lancy, L-E-N-S-E-Y,
And your address?
12 Longview Drive, Rockaway, New Jersey.
Go ahead.
Okay. Our house is approximately a quarter mile through the woods to Southard Salvage. We have been consistently awoken at 7 a.m., sometimes earlier, weekdays and Saturdays since they ramped up production. The sound travels very far and startles us out of our sleep. The banging and clanging go on for hours. The trucks transporting the material to the yard are very dangerous. I walk our dog on Lake Denmark and Valley roads, and I've seen the trucks do not stop at the stop sign, coming up Valley Road, and others travel very fast down the steep hill. It is not just the larger trucks, but other smaller vehicles such as pickup trucks that support transport material to Southard, which do not secure the payloads properly and have metal heaping over the truck beds. I make sure I move onto the grass whenever these trucks approach. My husband and I are concerned about the environment and what could be leaking into the aquifer from this site. What precautions are being taken to alleviate any of the chemicals and hazardous substances that are brought to the site? Our drinking water can be severely impacted by any spill. There is no noise abatement and sound travels very far, especially when the leaves on the trees are gone. I'm very sorry for anyone who lives on Valley Road with the trucks and the noise from the yard. Thank you, Melissa Lancy.
My name is Debbie Block, B-L-O-C-K, and I live at 32 Tides Lane in Staten Island, New York.
What was the name of that street?
Tides, T-I-D-E-S Lane.
And where in Staten Island? Staten Island?
Staten Island is one of the 5 boroughs of New York. If you want to know exactly, it's right by the Outer Bridge crossing.
Okay, great. And I'm sorry, your first name again?
Debbie.
Debbie, thank you.
You're welcome. In the early afternoon of October 21st, 2015, I was visiting my brother Bill Shoulder, who lives at 32 Valley Road. When I got there, I told him about my nerve-wracking experience on the road. I was driving behind a small truck that just turned off Lake Denmark Road onto Valley Road. We were approaching a curve in the road that went to the left. The truck in front of me had to swerve suddenly off the road to the right in order to avoid hitting a monstrous truck coming toward us from the opposite direction that was partly in our lane. He had to drive off the road so that the tires on the right side of his vehicle were completely in the dirt at the very edge of the road. It really shook me up. Thank you.
My name is Jerry Applebaum, A-P-P-E-L-B-A-U-M, 129 Valley View Drive, Rockaway. I don't have any connection with the neighborhood as I live in the White Meadow Lake section of Rockaway Township, but I'm friends with the Shoulders living at 32 Valley Road. In the spring of 2013, and I don't recall the exact date, after visiting with Mr. Shoulder, I left his house and proceeded to drive home in my Toyota RAV4, approximately 1 o'clock on a sunny day. I was headed from his house toward Lane Denmark Road and Green Pond Road. I would like to show 2 pictures that have already been submitted to the board that represent and illustrate what happened to me that day. There's a saying that a picture is worth 1,000 words. The first picture is picture number 9 that says, with 2 signs indicating that the road narrows and there's 1 lane ahead, and with a curve in the road. There is a bend in the road, and you cannot, from the picture you can see, you cannot see around the curve. I was driving in the vicinity of the bridge on Valley Road when I encountered one of the tractor trailers hauling salvage. When you drive in this area, you cannot see what is around the bend, as it is shown in the picture. I would describe this as a blind curve. The truck suddenly came into my view, and I would like to show you that second picture which has been submitted. which shows a truck, salvage truck, driving in the road down the middle of the lane on the double line.
For the record, what picture number is that?
I don't know what number that is, but it's been submitted to the board. I think it may have been tonight even. There's a packet.
This picture here?
Yes, that picture.
Okay.
For the record, Mr. Chairman, I don't have that, that was marked as an exhibit. I don't have the marking with me, but it does depict a Mack truck with a blue roof to the left of the double sign indicating road narrows and 1 lane ahead.
I was at a previous meeting when a picture of this type or this exact picture was submitted to the board. I don't have it.
Mr. Chairman,
Number.
sorry to interrupt, but just for the record, the applicant wasn't provided with a copy of these pictures, so we do not have any to refer to at this time.
Well, council indicated that these pictures were referred to earlier, probably when Mr. Szymanski was here, and he would probably have seen the picture, or pictures. They were, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Kids, they were produced at some point during the testimony?
Oh, yes, yeah, they were marked,
Yeah.
either the last time or the time
I thought these
before
were
that.
new pictures. I didn't
No,
realize this
these
was
were
the
pictures
older
that were
pictures.
earlier
I
presented during
apologize.
the testimonial phase of the hearing.
Understood, thank you, I apologize.
Just for the record, excuse me, to clarify the record, I believe picture 7 that has been referred to by 2 of the members of the public that spoke earlier has not been marked at any of the prior proceedings. That is looks like a Google map.
I think that was something that Mr. Shoulder submitted since the last
Right.
hearing. He submitted a number of pictures
Correct.
as exhibits.
I just want to point out,
Yeah.
that does not have an exhibit marking, so perhaps we should mark it tonight.
Well, you know what we may do to make things easier? I mean, his entire packet, which included primarily pictures, we could mark as one exhibit, unless you have some objection to that.
I have no objection.
And what do you suggest the marking should be?
P for public, P1?
Well, why don't, he submitted, Mr. Shoulder submitted it, so why don't we give it some designation with his initials or something?
WS, William
Yeah,
Shoulder?
I think that makes more sense.
WS1.
WS1. So for the record, the entire packet, which Mr. Shoulder even provided tonight in a folder, is going to be marked WS1.
And just for the
You
record.
you understand it, Mr. Shoulder? Yes. I know you're there in the audience.
And for the record, that folder has a caption on the outside of it, which reads handout list in order found in folder. And there's a list of documents underneath
Right.
that.
Okay, counsel, you have no objection to that. It'll be WS1. Okay, you can
I
continue,
can continue.
Mr. Applebaum.
So again, I was driving down the road and a truck of this nature suddenly came into my view. And the picture shows exactly what I encountered. And if I proceeded to drive ahead on my side of the road, we would have struck each other and had an accident. What I did to avoid this accident was to drive off the road to my right into the woods. There is no place on the roadway itself to stop to avoid a truck this large. I would describe this encounter as being driven off the road. I was lucky that I didn't become an accident statistic. I have some comments and observations that I would like to make. Number 1, tractor trailers of this length and size and carrying approximately 80,000 pounds that have been testified before to as to the weight are like battleships of the road. They cannot stop or maneuver suddenly to avoid another vehicle or a hazard in the road. In my opinion, because of the size, length, and weight of the trucks, and the curve and width of Valley Road, they cannot negotiate this section of the roadway without going into the center of the road and going across the double line, thus presenting a problem and a hazard for traffic coming in the opposite direction. Number 2, there has been much discussion about the signs placed on the road, such as single lane ahead and road narrows, and about if a double line is appropriate in the center of the road. Let's use some common sense. We can assume that these measures were taken with the idea of improving safety of vehicles on Valley Road. The question is, do they actually achieve that objective? The sign for single-lane traffic ahead means that a driver should yield to oncoming traffic. But because of the blind curve, you can't actually see the traffic ahead. This lack of visibility is a hazard to traffic safety. Number 3, the traffic expert has stated that the roadway is safe because it meets some requirements in a traffic manual or because of statistics on accidents. In my experience, this is clearly not the case. Let's not lose sight of the forest for the trees. Do not focus on small things such as signs or lines on the road. Instead, focus on the big picture of safety for vehicles and people traveling Valley Road. I believe that trucks of this size and weight are not compatible with passenger vehicles on Valley Road. This condition is just an accident waiting to happen, and it's just lucky that no one has already been injured. And number 5, I would recommend that the board or its representative actually come out and observe this section of the road around the bridge and see what happens when a tractor trailer is coming in the other direction. Don't just rely on testimony or standards in a traffic manual. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask the witness one follow-up question?
Sure.
I wanted to, just to clarify.
Sure.
In the incident where you said you were, had to drive off the side of
Yes.
the road, you did indicate that it was a Southern vehicle, Southern truck. Do you know if it was a Southern, or just you assume it was a vehicle from the Southern site?
I don't know who was operating the truck.
Okay,
It was a salvage truck.
Okay,
all I
that's
can
all.
say.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Chuck Appelian, A-P-E-L-I-A-N, 3 Stone Ridge Court. I used to have a dog. I walked down Valley
I'm sorry,
Road.
what was your address?
3 Stone Ridge Court.
Thank you.
I used to have a dog, a golden retriever, that I walked down regularly down Valley Road to the cul-de-sac and back. And I used to do that fairly regularly, but after an incident in 2009, I basically stopped doing that. And what happened during that incident is I was walking down on the left-hand side, so traffic is coming towards me. As I passed the little bridge down that I think some other folks have referenced, is I heard in the woods a big truck coming. You can hear the engine revving, you can hear the RPMs going up and down as it's shifting gears. At the same time, around the same time, there was also a car coming down Valley Road towards the cul-de-sac. And looking at where that car was, a little silver SUV, and the sounds coming from the woods, I knew that I should probably get out of the way. So I quickly pulled my dog and walked, it's probably about 40, 50 feet. There's a little turnoff where there's the preserve area there. It's a Green Acres, there's a big sign there. And instinctively, not only did I go off the road, I actually went back probably about 15 feet and stood right in front of the sign. And here comes the SUV, the little SUV's coming down. It's slightly perpendicular to me, or to the right angle to me. I'm perpendicular to the road. Here comes the truck, this big 18-wheeler type vehicle. And it's on the other side of the road. It's nowhere near where I am. As it comes around the turn, it sees the little SUV. That SUV had no place to go. It jammed on its brakes. It wasn't going that fast to start with. And the truck, the 18-wheeler, overcorrected. And not only did it overcorrect and go off the road, it literally came about 12 feet off the road. There's a turnoff there. And I actually had to take my dog and pull him with his leash and step back behind the sign. So now I'm about a good 15 feet approximately off the road. And if I hadn't just done that, I'm afraid that based on the situation of the truck going on the wrong side of the road, overcorrecting, trying to avoid the vehicle in a very narrow area, I would either myself or my dog would have been hit, or potentially that little SUV would have been hit because there was no place else to go. And the truck basically flew by, didn't slow down, didn't stop, and the SUV stopped there, and I just took a quick glance at the person. They're like, what just happened? And I just turned and kept on walking. And since that experience, I've realized it's really not that safe to walk down such a wooded residential area. The other part I'd like to mention as well, during those walks, is I observed lots of trash and litter. And it basically starts at that bridge area, and I haven't been there in a while, so I don't know if it still exists or not, but at the time in 2009, it definitely did. And you see a myriad of soda bottles, iced tea bottles, beer cans, fast food wrappers, things of that nature. And And I would be amazed, it's such a nice wooded area, and there's trash everywhere on both sides. I thought, what a shame. But ironically, after you pass the salvage yard, you don't see that trash anymore. So I don't know, man, just making assumptions here, but where's that trash coming from? I don't think it's from garbage cans. I think it's the drivers, wherever they be, you know, going back and forth to the salvage yard, you're basically tossing trash out their window. And that concerns me as well. It basically cheapens the whole area. But again, since I haven't walked down there since 2009, I'm not sure if that case still exists, but felt it important to share that with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. My name is John Boland, B-O-L-A-N-D. I am the closest person to Salvage.
Your address, please.
36 Valley Road.
Thank you.
The expansion that took place runs right across my backyard that I can look out and see. I can see the containers that were put up when the leaves go down. You can see them very clearly. I bought my property in 1976 and built my house and moved into it in 1986. For over 20 years, my family was able to enjoy our house, and we lived in harmony with Southard Salvage, even though we are so close to the site. Before the containers were installed around 207, we could walk deep into the woods behind our house and saw trees in all directions. These trees were blocking our view of what was happening near the entranceway, where piles of railroad ties could be found. We could not hear the operation from behind our house. In 1985, these railroad tie piles were quite high, as little storage was available because most of the land still contained trees. The railroad tie piles created a view from a height of 12 feet. The 1985 ordinance, or whatever you call it, had been put in place, and restrictions were made on the property that was there now. In 1985, the town planning board grandfathered in Southern Salvage property and put restrictions on it so that both residential and business could coexist. In 2007, all the rules were broken. Southern Salvage expanded, put in a weight scale, office trailer, storage containers, stacked them too high with no setback, cut down a large area of trees. None of these things were approved by the town. They have been running for about 8 years. Now my backyard looks like Port Newark. 40 to 50 tractor trailers a day come down the road that's too narrow and comes to a dead end. The 60 trains in the yard are being cut up, and a toxic smoke fills the valley. I also had 2 flat tires on both my cars this week, which is a common complaint in our residential neighborhood. It was never our plan to put Southern Salvage out of business. For over 20 years, everything was fine. Now it's a nightmare. Yesterday, I was woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning when they started dumping tractor trailers of scrap. The only time we saw the zoning officer in 8 years was the day after we put up signs to say, "Stop Southern Salvage." He was there the next morning at 8 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jerry Boland, 36 Valley Road.
I just want to indicate for the record,
Yeah.
Mrs. Bowen, as I recall, you were called as a witness and sworn under oath by Mr. Kins, and you testified you were cross-examined. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. This is not the time to repeat your testimony, okay? Since you were sworn under oath and so testified.
Mhm.
If you have comments, opinions, or whatever, that's certainly permitted at this juncture.
Okay.
Do you understand that?
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so regarding the noise, I wanted to, just read an excerpt of an article published by the American Association of Nurse Anesthesiologists that describes how noise can affect our health. Every day.
I think that's
No?
hearsay.
Okay,
Yeah, but she's not here as a fact witness.
Well, wait a minute, she wants to present an article, Mr. Kins, from some association. You don't consider that hearsay, counsel?
Wait, can I be heard?
Well,
Based,
I'm saying that's what it appears she wants to do before she
this
gets into
board,
it.
this board has heard probably hours upon hours of testimony from witnesses and now members of the public who have testified and opined that they have had their lives dramatically impacted by the noise coming from this site, amongst
We all
other
know
things.
that. Let's get to the heart here.
This woman lives closest to this site
We
than
know
any
that.
other person in this room. And she wants to rely on what appears to be an authoritative treatise to support her testimony and her opinion. I don't think there's anything that prevents a member of the public in bolstering their testimony to do that. I'm not aware of anything in the MLUL or in any case authority.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask the audience to please refrain from any noise. Thank you.
Counsel, what's your position on
I have to disagree. The one law that's out there that specifically prohibits this is the hearsay law. While the rules of evidence are not strictly enforced by boards, hearsay is one of the rules of evidence that most boards do adhere to. Reading an article that was written by someone else is clearly hearsay.
And how do
If
we
they
know
want to
this
give their opinion regarding the article, we have no objection to it, but just reading an article would be strictly hearsay.
And how do we know this is some sort of treatise?
Well, you don't know
As you
because she hasn't given you the title yet, but I think she is at least permitted to tell us what it is.
She could indicate she has an opinion based on an article she read. But to refer specifically to the article, I don't think is proper. It's her opinion that is what is relevant here, not what an article says. When the article can't be cross-examined, can't be questioned.
I don't want to
And,
quarrel
you know,
with you.
this is something, Mr. Kins, that could have easily, when she testified, been addressed at that time.
Mr. Isker, she's not an expert witness. It couldn't have been addressed
Well,
within
she's
the
not-
purview
then
of her
why are
testimony.
you saying that she should be permitted to talk about an article? if
Because
she's not an
now
expert
she's
witness?
giving opinion based on her
And I have no
sensibilities being
objection
offended.
to her giving an opinion, but she can't read from the article. She could say she read an article by so-and-so, and based on that article, she has certain opinions.
Okay.
You
It
understand,
seems
ma'am?
Every time I'm up here, I cause a lot of trouble.
We have rules of evidence, and we're
I
not trying to,
understand.
you know, preclude you from giving your own personal comments and opinions, but you have an article there that you've read, and you form some opinions. That's certainly proper.
Okay, can I say that scientists are being concerned about chronic exposure to noise? And they say that it may lead to persistent increases in stress hormone levels and blood pressure.
Well, I don't think anybody would dispute that everybody's concerned about noise, whether it's scientists, the neighbors, whatever, so. I mean, that's not certainly improper. I don't think you have to even refer to scientists are concerned about noise.
Now, when I testified, I wanted to say that on March 16th, 2013, a policeman knocked at my door and told me that Verizon wires had been knocked down by a large truck, and there was debris.
Well, that's hearsay, what somebody else told you.
What a policeman knocked on my door. It happened to me. I'm saying that a policeman came to my door.
Yeah, but what he told you was hearsay. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, please respect the board here, the attorney for the board, the person who's speaking. Otherwise, we're going to have people removed from the hearing. It's totally improper. Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, how about...
You can tell us based on what the police officer said, but not what he said. You form certain conclusions or opinions.
Well, so I went outside and I saw that our Verizon wire had been knocked, was down on the ground, and there was metal debris all over the front of my yard.
Did you see who knocked the wires down?
I did not.
Okay.
Okay, so, a truck came and picked up the debris, a truck from Southard came and picked up the debris. And I called Verizon, and a couple days they came and fixed the wire. Okay, so those kind of things are the things that we experience every day. I wanted to also say that Mr. Southard's expert referred to the Big Dig in Boston. And I just find it incredible that we are comparing Valley Road in Rockaway Township, a rural residential area, to the Big Dig in Boston, an industrial, temporary construction site. Southard Salvage is a permanent industrial site in a residential area. Let me see what else. I don't know what I'm allowed to say and what I'm not. Am I allowed to, I guess I'm not allowed to read something from Southern Salvage's own website?
I'm sorry, what?
May I read something from Southern Salvage's own website?
Sure, I mean, it refers to the applicant, so that's certainly an exception to any type of hearsay.
Thank you. Because I just want to, the board to realize that in 2007, everything changed. Okay, so I lived peacefully, happily, 1986 until 2007. That's, 20 years. 1986, 1987, 1980. I can bore you with every single year, but I just want you to realize it changed overnight, okay? And that was, I believe, when John Southard Jr. took over the business. The Southern Salvage website says, our services also expanded into wrecking work, which include on-site shearing, burning, turnkey wrecking, dismantling services, interior demolition, site compaction, boiler demolition, crushing services, contract hauling services, tank and stack demolition, and excavation and blasting services. And then just one other small thing, John Jr.'s accomplishments since carrying on the family business are endless, including expanding and renovating his business with the best technology has to offer. You cannot deny that this business has expanded and has changed.
Can you just tell us when you looked at this website? And
When I looked originally at
no,
this
well,
website?
you read certain things from the website. I'm just wondering
Okay, I'll tell you
when you got
when
that
I-
off the website. Was it recently or how long ago?
Uh,
Approximately.
Approximately when these hearings started, 2012.
3 years ago?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And, I'm sorry, one more thing. In the newspaper today, there was an article about Chatham Township. Superior judge upheld the Chatham Township Zoning Board's denial of an application by New Singular. New Singular sought approval of the antennas.
Well, we're not gonna get into case law and what judges decided, ma'am, on cell towers, okay, in Chatham
Okay.
Township. I don't think that's relevant to
Well, it
the
is
issues
because,
at hand here.
because it
Because
says.
it's not even a cell tower application.
I know, but they were concerned, I'm just saying, if Chatham Township was concerned about noise, negative aesthetic impact, alternative sites would be better suited, and the devaluation of neighborhood property values. So I would just request that this board would take into consideration the way Chatham Township took into consideration
That's
the
a whole different
residents and.
situation, because that's just in the planning stages. We're talking about a business that's been here for 60-some years or more.
Yes, but it's not the same business that was here before 2007. And I just want to finish by saying I'm disappointed that not everyone is here on the board, and especially Mr.
Well,
Sheninger.
keep in mind, ma'am, and so everybody in the audience knows this, that even though board members may miss a meeting or two, okay, they get a copy of the transcript. You probably realize that at every hearing, Mr. Kins has a transcriber here.
Yes.
So every board member who misses a meeting either listens to and this is all being recorded, as you know,
Yeah.
listens to a disc of everything that goes on, or reads the transcript. Otherwise, they would not be eligible to vote at the end. So rest assured that when this application comes to a vote, that all of the members who are voting, even though they may have missed one or more meetings, are completely familiar with what has gone on when they missed the meeting. In fact, they have to sign a certification that they have either read the transcript of the meeting they missed, or the hearing they missed, or listened to a disc, okay? So rest assured that even though we have a number of members who are not here tonight, they will be reviewing, long before a vote is taken, what is going on tonight.
Oh, thank you, that's encouraging. Thank you.
Carol Pies, P-A-E-Z, 34 Valley Road. I moved into our home in 2001. I'm the next house after the Boland house going towards Lake Denmark. Mr. Zimmerman stated in his report, while somewhat unconventional, quote from the report, while somewhat unconventional, the containers do achieve their purpose of providing a solid sound and visual barrier. The closest non-southern dwelling.
Excuse me, ma'am, can I interrupt you 1 second?
Sure.
You testified under oath.
Correct.
Correct? So, we don't want you to reiterate your sworn testimony, okay?
Mm-hmm.
What you should be doing now is simply giving public comment, your opinions or whatever about the application. Since you already testified, you were called by Mr. Kins. I'm just
Correct,
taking my
but
notes.
these reports were long after I had testified.
Okay,
In other words,
that's fine, you
comments
can address those
to-
reports. But I
okay.
just don't want you to
Right.
reiterate.
I'm trying not to, that's why these things
Okay.
are, I hope, if I did, I'm getting pretty old, so if I do seem to repeat, then you let me know,
I
okay?
just want you to be aware of what you can do and
Yeah,
not to
because I
repeat
tried
what you testified under
to
oath.
not
Okay,
repeat
thank you.
that. Okay, so he said the closest non-southern dwelling further along Valley Road to the northeast is 215 feet from the subject property. This dwelling cannot see the subject property. By the description, he's referring to my property. Now can I refer to during testimony? During testimony, let me shut up if I can. I provided photos taken from my yard that shows unsightly metal containers and giant cranes and or backhoes that tower over these containers. Since these containers and giant machines are part of Southard's property, the statement, this dwelling cannot see the subject property, is incorrect. The trees that I saw before the addition of metal containers were much more pleasing and harmonious with the neighborhood. In 1985, metal containers were not needed for a sound or visual barrier. The fact that they were installed around 2007 indicates that noise was not a problem before this date. Mr. Zimmerman presented that the present use remains true to the 1985 conclusion of the board that the use is not discordant or disharmonious with the neighborhood. Based on the testimonies presented by the neighbors this evening, it is obvious that this is not true. In the 1985 resolution, the township set guidelines to assure Southern site would remain residential friendly. For example, the resolution stated, the subdivision and relocation of railroad ties will create a more residential environment along Valley Road. The township was concerned about I'm thinking the township by that, I looked at it, in my opinion, the township was showing concern about the very high piles of railroad ties that could be viewed from Valley Road. A 12-foot height restriction was placed on these ties even though they were to be relocated. It's my opinion that the resolution only put the limitation on railroad ties, only on railroad ties, because there were no other eyesores over that height at that time. And if indeed the containers and huge piles of scrap metal that are there now had been there in 1985, that same height restriction on those items would have been included and should be applied now. The 1985 resolution also stated landscaping should be done so there would be visible improvement to the area. It's my opinion this was to minimize the unsightly views for the neighborhood. The expansion has indeed resulted in quite the opposite. More equipment, containers, huge piles of scrap metal are clearly visible from Valley Road or neighbors' homes. Presently, the neighborhood has lost its residential character, peace and tranquility, as well as a result of the business expansion of Southern Salvage. If back in 1985 the township wanted to hide the operation from the views seen on Valley Road near the entrance, then they definitely wanted to hide it from their backyards and front yard views. Mr. Zimmerman stated, the spirit and intent of the condition was to remove a highly visible salvage material from Valley Road view. Today, giant backhoes and cranes tower over the metal containers are in our view on a daily basis. The large trucks that we constantly see in here have destroyed the residential character of our neighborhood as well. I was not here in 1985, but I can tell you this type of truck traffic did not exist prior to 2007. I was here. And is evidence of Southern Salvage expansion. The constant truck noise is not residential friendly. The noise experts provided reports based on decibel levels. I believe these are irrelevant when it comes to living with constant noise. I ask the board, may I play a 30-second recording for you?
I'm sorry?
May I play a 30-second recording for you?
I don't think that's necessary.
Well, what is this recording of? When was it taken?
It was taken about 2012, and it's what we live with day in and day out.
Is there any reason why this wasn't brought up during testimony?
I
When you
think that
testified?
Well, you're asking her or you're asking me?
No, I'm asking her. Did she provide this, we have certain procedural requirements. As you know, in fact, Mr. Shoulder was requested at the last meeting, which he complied, to present certain information exhibits, which he did. I don't think, just on that procedure alone, that it's fair for the board, certainly for council, for you to appear here tonight with something that, especially council, has not had an opportunity to listen to, neither has Mr. Kins or whatever. So I'm not so sure, but I leave it to the board as to whether or not, we're going to allow this recording to be used.
Mr. Chairman, to hold members of the public to the same procedural requirements as attorneys and their clients in connection with the hearing that has occurred here, I think is unfair on the other side.
We
There's
did it with
nothing-
Mr. Shoulder. He provided as an objector, he provided materials to the board. This evening, he provided it within 10 days.
That's fine, that's fine, but there's no requirement in any case authority or the MLUL which says a member of the public cannot display or demonstrate a video, a
I'm not
photograph, or a
suggesting
tape.
that they can't do it, but procedurally, would it be nice to have this provided, as everybody else, including Mr. Shoulder, provided it to the board prior to tonight, and especially the council?
It would have been nice, I guess, but is it procedurally required?
I
No.
want to hear from council.
It's not required anyway.
I would object to presenting it because if this witness is not being sworn, we have no just a foundation for where this tape was taken, when it was taken, if it actually is representative of the area of any operations from the salvage yard. She could state what it is at this point, but without being sworn and testify, we can't hold her to that statement. And I would place an objection to
My concern with this is a noise recording. Now, it's impossible to say what the volume of the actual noise is because it's a recording. The volume could be up or down, and we can never know what the actual.
It's okay, because I can give you another example. I don't need to play the recording. I think you've all probably had it quite clear now from everybody here that the noise is not minor. Could I ask you though, who was here when they were doing the construction across the hall during one of these meetings? Were any of you here when they were doing the construction across the hall? Can I see a show of hands? None of you were here? Was anyone in the back here when they were doing the construction? The other two, none of you were here. None of you, okay. In any event, they were doing construction across the hall, all right? We were having this meeting, one of our wonderful meetings here. And, I mean, it was tremendous disturbance. Decibel levels probably didn't exceed 65 decibel levels. No, probably didn't. But it was interrupting this meeting. And that's the same thing with these sounds. The decibel levels are irrelevant to me. It is the sound that we have to live with day in and day out, and that interrupts our lives. It eliminates the peace and tranquility of our homes. It is definitely disharmonious. It is definitely discordant. However, all the variances requested by Southard are for additions they made without permission from the township to expand their operations without regard for the peace and tranquility, and are indeed discordant and non-harmonious with the neighborhood. With this in mind, I ask the board to deny all variances requested by Southard Salvage. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other comments?
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Stephen Loki.
Is that with PH or H?
It's PH, thank you.
And your last name again?
It's Lowke. I live at 2 Grandview Place, Rockaway. I would like to address several statements in David Zimmerman's rebuttal report. According to Mr. Zimmerman, the approval was for a salvage operation which is substantially similar to the use of the premises since 1949-1950, and therefore is a continuation of non-conforming use. In another statement, Mr. Zimmerman gave his opinion that there is no factual evidence that the salvage operation business, inherent in the present application, has been measurably expanded from 1985. It was granted approval for salvage use on 7.47 acres, and the present application is for salvage use on 7.47 acres. There is no expansion. Therefore, Mr. Zimmerman's claim that this operation is substantially similar to 1985 and has undergone no measurable expansion since 1985 would seem to be based on 2 factors alone, namely that the operation has had the word salvage in its name since 1985, and that its owner did and still does possess 7.47 acres. According to another statement by Mr. Zimmerman, trucks, cranes, and heavy equipment may of necessity change depending upon the scrap being processed. Mr. Zimmerman himself admits that there is no upper limit to the amount of equipment Southard can employ to process recyclable metals, whose volume in turn is limited only by the demand for such metals, regardless of the impact this has on the peace and tranquility of nearby residents. Nevertheless, while acknowledging the multiplication of equipment and the intensification of operations, Mr. Zimmerman persists in claiming that there's no measurable expansion and that the present business remains substantially similar to its 1985 incarnation. The present extent of the business is illustrated in picture 3 previously submitted. It should be evident that the business can and has been expanded and changed within the compass of 7.47 acres. Mr. Zimmerman's statement that the present application before the board is to use all 7.47 acres establishes that Southard intends to use the entire property in any manner it may choose, expanding its operations with no regard for its neighbors, while still claiming non-conforming use status. I ask the board to deny the request for a variance and to require Southard Salvage to return to the operation envisioned in the 1985 resolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Bill Shoulder, and I live at 32 Valley Road, and I moved into my house in 1980.
Spell your last name.
SCHOLDER, and I will not repeat anything that I said when I was under oath.
That's greatly appreciated.
Okay. You're gonna hear some very interesting things, though.
I'm sorry?
You will hear some very interesting things, though. In 1985, the township was observing Southard's operations. For example, they saw high piles of railroad ties that could be observed from Valley Road. The township tried to create a solution to allow the Southards to continue their non-conforming use while at the same time looking out for the welfare of the homeowners. Okay. The result was the 1985 resolution. And I would like to refer to a table that I created with statements copied directly from the 1985 resolution. And I will also point out some statements made by Zimmerman in regard to that 1985 resolution. And you have a copy of this table. If you look at, what was handed, you can see where that table is.
Is that table number 1 you referred to it, right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
I believe it's table related to quotes from the 1985 resolution. Okay. Now, okay, I'm basically going to walk through some of those things, and then I'm going to bring some other information, So, okay, the first statement from the 1985 resolution says that no railroad tie pile shall exceed 12 feet in height. Okay, and Mr. Zimmerman, in his rebuttal report, he says there was a restriction on the height of railroad ties, but no restriction in the resolution on the height of autos, buses, or other scrap metal. So he takes it because they said a restriction of 12 feet only for railroad ties, that every other salvage material, scrap, could be any height whatsoever. Okay, now I'm going to be spending a lot of time referring to a document which I recently opened from the township a couple of days ago. And
Has that been provided to the board?
You have it. You have a copy in the package.
Okay, just give us the numbers so we can
Well,
reference it. What do
It
you have
basically is a
identified?
minor subdivision plat from January 8th, 1985.
You don't have a copy of this with you in front of you?
I have, what we did, it was a big drawing, and the important information was basically copied. You have a copy of this.
Okay, you
in
said
front of you.
minor subdivision plat dated
Minor subdivision
1/8/85?
plat, January 8th, 1985.
For the record, Mr. Chairman, not to interrupt Mr. Shoulder, but that document has been marked as an evidentiary exhibit. I believe it's RW1 or RW2.
Okay. All right, counsel, that would have been during Mr. Saminsky's,
Yes, I believe I actually have a copy. I'm trying to find it myself with me.
all right, you want, Mr. Shaw, you want to give counsel a minute, he wants to try to find his copy.
I can show you what it looks like. That's the one. 1985.
It's also part of, counsel, it's part of this folder that Mr. Shoulder provided to you and the board.
If you look at this drawing.
You have it?
No, I never got a copy of that folder is what I meant before. I understand a lot of those exhibits might have been previously submitted or identified as exhibits, but I never received a copy of that folder that was identified.
Okay, you have a copy of it?
Thank you
Of
very
the
much.
plat now? Okay, go ahead.
So if we look at this drawing, what it shows is what this site was approved for in 1985. And what it shows is railroad ties stockpiles to be relocated. To the right of the old driveway, another one, railroad stockpiles to be relocated to the left of the driveway. Further down, it says railroad ties, and then it shows a big area, relocated railroad ties. And if you look at this drawing, you also see it says abandoned autos, small section, and then boulders, brush, and trees, and then it says small amounts of scrap metal. Small amounts of scrap metal. Now, if in 1985, when Zimmerman says we don't know what the truck traffic was in 1985, and I'll get into that more later, okay? Obviously, if we have reports from the traffic expert that counted truck that showed there were sometimes in excess of 50 trucks a day. And if you did have that volume of trucks then in 1985, you wouldn't have had small amounts of scrap metal, okay? So that was a small part of the business. So now I'm going to just go back to what Zimmerman said, that there was a restriction on the height of railroad ties, but no restriction in the resolution on the height of autos, buses, or other scrap metal. Carol pointed this out when she spoke, that if you did have those piles in 1985, then the township definitely would have put a restriction on those as well. Okay, the next statement is that the subdivision and relocation of railroad ties will create a more residential environment along Valley Road. And Carol already pointed this out. What Zimmerman said was, the spirit and the intent of the condition was to remove a highly visible salvage material from Valley Road. So the township did everything that it could to make this neighborhood residential friendly. It's pointed out many, many places. The next thing is the non-conforming use is being reduced in area. That was part of the 1985 resolution, and I assume that the reason they said that is because part of this subdivision, they took 1 acre of residential land, and they took that away from the 8.5 acres, and that reduced the size of the salvage business, and also because the first 240 feet was off of Valley Road, it took the business away from Valley Road. So that was a real good intention of making it residential friendly, and that was one of the reasons that they approved the 1985 resolution. So now, so the non-conforming use is being reduced in area. Okay. Now it says a subsequent site visit in 2012 by David Novak shows that clear space is presently being used for the storage of material. The utilization of this clear space represents an expansion of non-conforming use. So David Novak cited them on removing trees that they shouldn't have removed and then using that space to store material. And they were cited as an expansion of non-conforming use. Now, what David Zimmerman says is, the 1985 resolution found that granting the minor subdivision to create a new residential lot and relocate of the railroad ties will create a more residential environment, especially recognizing the new residential lot removed 1 acre of salvage property 240 feet deep from Valley Road. The use and operation today maintains the 1985 objective. Okay, so now I would like you to take a look at pictures.
Mr. Scholl, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think you're taking some of the wind out of Mr.
That's okay,
Gibbs'
that's
summation
fine,
of closing
that's fine.
arguments.
That's
because
fine.
You sound like a
That's
lawyer
right.
giving a summation of closing argument.
Okay. Okay, so look at picture number 1 and look at picture number 10. Okay, the intent was to make it residential friendly, take away 1 acre of property off of Valley Road. Okay, look at picture number 1. Okay, you can also look at picture number 2, which comes from the 2012 major site plan. And what that picture shows, if you look at picture number 2, it shows the 2-story dwelling, the 2-story garage, and the dwelling. And if you look at the 25-foot setback lines, you'll see that they're just about touching the 25-foot setback line. And the only reason
Hold
that
on, hold on. Apparently some, if not all the board members don't have what you're just referring to.
this was presented a month ago. Pictures 1, 2, 3, 4.
So now you
on and so
presented
forth.
at the last
The
hearing?
last time.
Okay.
It's not in what I gave you today, but
Okay.
it was presented.
You gotta help us along when you're
Okay.
referring to certain items that,
You know, Erin basically took care of it. I saw her in the township building when I got the Oprah. She said it was all passed
you
out.
have to help the board
Okay.
members out by
Can you find
saying
it?
that these were pictures presented last time, because
Last
they're
time.
looking in your folder.
Okay, right, I would have added them, but I gave them to you. so
No,
I don't
that's
have
all right,
them.
no, it's no problem, but just
So-
help us out when they're not
Okay,
in
so
your folder,
basically,
say they were presented last time.
What picture 1 shows, and I hope you can find it. Can you find picture 1?
I have a picture.
Okay, you have picture 1?
This one here.
Picture. Okay, I believe that's the one. So what picture 1 shows is residential property, lot 141.01 and lot 142. Okay, again, the intent of the 1985 resolution was to make it residential friendly. Look at what's going on in this picture. All kinds of machines and so on and so forth. Okay, and if you look at picture 10, you can get another view from Valley Road, where we're trying to make Valley Road residential friendly. Can you find picture 10? That was in the present package. Okay, what you see is one,
Was not in today's package.
in today's package, picture 10, in today's package.
Why don't you hold up picture 10 so it'll make it easier for the board to find a picture and look at it
This
as you're
is the
talking
view,
about it.
this is the view from Valley Road, previously submitted by Frank Mileto. So you're looking from Valley Road, and what you're seeing is a whole lineup of giant backhoes, tractor trailers, every kind of equipment that you can imagine. Okay, that's the lineup from Valley Road. The township in 1985 says, let's make it residential friendly. So what do you have? You're making use of this residential property with all this equipment, and then this other drawing also shows what's happening on residential property, 25-foot setbacks ignored, and so on and so forth. Now I believe I might be coming back to the minor subdivision plan. So we just covered that the non-conforming use is being reduced in area, where David Zimmerman says, especially recognizing the new residential lot limit of 1 acre, 240 feet. Okay, the use and operation today maintain the 1985 objective. The applicant testified, number 4, the applicant testified that the railroad tie piles will be relocated and landscaping done so that there will be a visual improvement to the area. David Zimmerman in 2012 said that a proposed and approved landscaping buffer between subject site and lot 141.01 and the subject site, okay, that it was approved and it was proposed and approved. And then Zimmerman says in 2012, when he went back there, the site visit revealed that this has not been addressed. And Zimmerman says the objective presented to the board a 1985 site plan exhibit that superimposed proposed landscaping upon the minor subdivision plat. Okay, so he's recognizing in 1985 they had it. So now if you look at, again, going back to the minor subdivision plat dated January 8th, if you look at it, you can see that there's proposed landscaping. That proposed landscaping covers the back of lot 141.01 and also all the way along the driveway. And if you also follow this picture, you see that what they called lot 123 back then, it shows all kinds of trees on the back of that property that meets up with the proposed landscaping buffer. So if you're looking from Valley Road, it would be residential friendly as you can't see the site. Okay. Now if we look at the 2012 major site plan that was recently submitted, that's picture number 2 in what I gave you, what I presented last time. Okay. And with it, if you look at the 2012 plan and you compare it to the 1985 version, the 1985 version, if you look at it, it shows all kinds of trees that meet up with this proposed landscaping buffer. Okay, again, blocks the view from Valley Road. Mr. Zimmerman in the 2012 plan left out those trees, although he says that the 2012 plan was derived directly from the 1985 version, which it was to some degree, except he left certain things out. So again, the aim was to have this visual improvement for the neighborhoods, especially along Valley Road, and also in the neighbors' backyards. The applicant will obtain whatever permits are required. Obviously, the 1985 resolution stated, they said it was in regard to relocating railroad ties, but they said the applicant will obtain whatever permits are required, okay? And David Novak, if we look at his report, he cited many illegal expansions. So when David Zimmerman says there is no unauthorized, invalid expansion of the salvage operation business over what was allowed in 1985. Can't quite understand that. No unauthorized, invalid expansion of the salvage operation business over what was allowed in 1985. Yet Zimmerman testified illegal expansions in many, many areas. So that statement doesn't make much sense to me. Okay. The applicant testified that his salvage operation is substantially similar to the use of the premise since 1949 to 1950, and therefore is a continuation of non-conforming use. And I would agree that in 1985 it was a continuation of non-conforming use because they did substantially similar things. Now, Zimmerman says the board approved the continuation of valid pre-existing non-conforming use of the property as a salvage operation as operated in the past in 1985 and proposed to be operated in the future. So his word proposed to be operated in the future isn't correct, because it was substantially similar and there was no expansion in 1985. But if we look at pictures that you had last week, well, if you look at picture 1 and you look at picture number 3, and if you look at picture number 8, okay, let's take a look at picture number 8. Picture number 8 is a small section of the yard. Picture number 3 shows the entire yard, and it shows an entire yard with over 60 transit trains sitting on the property. And I know that because I counted them. So if we look at picture number 8, what you see in one small location is 3 giant backhoes, one with this magnetic thing to load this truck with material, 3 giant backhoes, and then 2 bulldozers. So 5 pieces of equipment in one small area. And I'll get into, what I try to understand way back when I want to understand what is the definition that the township provided for expansion of non-conforming use.
Let me just interrupt you 1 second. Obviously, your comments, for the most part, have to do with your conclusion, opinions, and whatever of Mr. Zimmerman's testimony. Keep in mind that Mr. Zimmerman is still to be cross-examined.
I understand that.
By Mr. Kins.
I'm just...
Well, let me just finish. So I want you to know that I don't think it would be very proper for you to get a second bite at the apple after Mr. Kins cross-examines Mr. Zimmerman at the next hearing in January, and maybe Mr. Szymanski does redirect for you to come back up here and comment further on Mr. Zimmerman's testimony.
I'm trying to take care of it right now.
Based on cross-examination and perhaps redirect. You understand?
I understand that.
Okay, just wanted
I'm
to
almost
be clear
I'm almost
that there's
done with
still
that.
attorneys to question.
I get it.
Okay, thank you.
And the last thing, statement number 7, is the proposed subdivision and salvage operation is not discordant nor disharmonious with the location of other structures located on Valley Road. And Mr. Zimmerman, and I presented to the board just 1 page from, I gave you his entire rebuttal package, which was 8 pages, but I also took out 1 page, which I combined 2 pages into 1, which is in harmony with the neighborhood. Okay, and the conclusion at the end of that page says that, in my opinion, the present application before the board remains true to the 1985 conclusion of the board that the use is not discordant nor disharmonious with the neighborhood. That's his conclusion. Now, if you look at that piece of paper that he presented, what he basically says is, I agree with the 1985 resolution that says we're in harmony with the neighborhood. And then he says, and we should note the following. He says nobody knows what the sound levels were in 1985. Nobody knows what the traffic levels were in 1985. Homes on occasion in Stone Ridge, on occasion, could hear sounds from these neighborhoods. Okay, that's basically what he said, and based on that, he somehow reaches the conclusion that because we didn't know what the sound or truck traffic was in 1985, that it must be in harmony with the neighborhood if it was in 1985. Can't understand that conclusion. Okay, so that's the end of the 1985 resolution. And basically what I'm trying to say is that if you look at every reason that the 1985 resolution was granted, none of those reasons are valid today. Now I have one more piece that I'd like to cover, and I have been trying to understand what the meaning of non-conforming use is, okay? What does the township consider to be an expansion of non-conforming use? So I went to the township building and I got document number,
Let me address you for a moment, interrupt you.
Yeah.
A non-conforming use is regulated by the statute, okay, and case law, all right? So, I mean, and this is something that the board is
I
going to have to
understand that.
determine.
I understand
So
that.
this is a legal principle.
I understand that.
Okay.
And when I went to the township business, they said, you cannot talk to Mr. Novak, okay? We gave you a copy of that document, and I don't remember exactly what the document number was. Yeah, I think I do. and I shouldn't take too much longer, okay, hopefully. It was document 54-30.4. And I felt that if Mr. Zimmerman was able to go out and do his job and basically say that you violated this non-conforming use, that he would have to know what the definition meant. So I went in there trying to understand what it meant, and I was told that the board is gonna be deciding that, and therefore he can't answer that question. But I still got a copy of the document, and the document basically says definition 1, any non-conforming use or structure which is non-conforming because of use shall not be enlarged, extended, or structurally altered in any manner whatsoever.
And I assume you're quoting from the township ordinance?
Right directly, and it was right directly from the township.
So the record is clear what you're quoting from?
Right. Okay. Shall not be enlarged in any manner whatsoever. And the definition seems quite clear. Frank Mileto also basically had said that, and then I got a copy of it, and he said the same thing. Yes, it seems quite clear. Shall not be enlarged in any manner whatsoever.
That's the zoning ordinance that the board all has.
Okay.
Just so you know.
Okay. I'm just reading one sentence from it, okay, because that's all you can really find. And, you know, it says, shall not be enlarged in any manner whatsoever. And then when you look at what existed in 1985, where if you go back to the minor site plan, minor subdivision plat, it basically shows a crane, trucks, and a crane. And Mr. Zimmerman also said that the business needed trucks and a dozer, singular, okay? And now, if you look at these pictures, okay, you can see the number of these giant backhoes. You know, we could go and count them, but the number is large, and it's much, much larger than what existed what existed in 1985. And now I'm going to just go on to the second definition. And the second definition says, no non-conforming structure may be structurally altered if the alteration would increase the degree or extent of the non-conforming condition, or would create any condition on the property that would not be in conformance with the chapter. David Zimmerman stated that he was seeking the approval of concrete footings and a new ramp to accommodate the replacement scale, okay? So you never really had a scale that could measure trucks, let alone a 60-foot tractor trailer, okay? But he's asking for approval of this weigh station. And I would just like to conclude by reading from a table which shows how the weigh station has increased the degree or extent of the non-conforming condition, and then I'll be done. Okay. How the weigh station increased the degree or extent of the non-conforming condition. It allows and encourages scrap collectors to bring material to the site for sale to the Southard, and Frank Mileto stated that. This brought about the sudden surge in truck traffic. Before the installation of the weigh station in 2007, truck traffic was minimal, as many neighbors have already testified. Today, there are as many as 50 or more trucks are observed entering the site. For more information, read the previously submitted traffic report by Joe Steiger. These trucks are responsible for the massive amount of material brought to the site, which then has to be processed. To process this amount of material, new equipment had to be purchased. New equipment cannot be purchased to expand a non-conforming use business. This was stated by Frank Mileto. This new equipment has caused much of the noise that the neighbors started. The new equipment basically is giant backhoes with these grapples. And these grapples pick giant piles of scrap, and then they crush them, or they dump them into trucks or bins, or they just create piles and piles with these giant grapples attached to these backhoes. So now with the new equipment has caused much of the noise that the neighbors started hearing after 2007. Now with the intensity of the business increasing, more land is needed to process and store the huge amount of scrap. Therefore, the need to illegally cut down trees and illegally store scrap on this land. You have already learned this from David Novak's memorandum, that they illegally removed trees and stored this material in places that they didn't belong. Okay. Now, because there's still not enough land, the piles illegally get higher and higher. My conclusion is the intent shown in the 1985 non-subdivision plat is not substantially similar to the present operation shown in picture 3. A variance should not be granted for the illegally installed weigh station.
Kim Brennan, 6 Stone Ridge Court, Rockaway Township, New Jersey. I moved into Stone Ridge Court in July of 2007. Southard Salvage has expanded their operation in a multitude of ways without obtaining permits or township approval. It's clear, if you look at the 1985 resolution, that the township expected that Southard Salvage would obtain required permits before starting any work that would expand the non-conforming use of this business. This didn't happen, and that's why we're here. Southard Salvage has ignored the township rules. They've taken advantage of the zoning board, the citizens, the town, and that has a negative impact on the peace and tranquility of my neighborhood. By scaling measurements from the 2012 major site plan, if you look at picture number 2, which I think everybody has, you can look at that weigh station, and you can determine it's 180 feet long by 10 to 12 feet wide. It's hard to believe that a structure of this size is almost 2/3 the length of a football field. It was added to the site without any type of permit. I don't understand why it took 5 years for the township to finally write this memorandum that David Novak wrote. And we recognize it's a legal expansion of a non-conforming use. The rules are, you apply for a variance, you get a permit if you're approved. So why does the township continue to let this company use this weigh station when there has been no variance approved? Either something happens in town that year, was there someone on vacation all year that didn't look at this? And why are we still talking about this years later? So you can also look at this 2012 major site plan. There's a note on there that says material currently stored in this area is to be removed. Look at picture 4. It hasn't been removed. Look at picture 3. There's transit trains there. That's despicable. I want to understand why the township is allowing this. There's also some 25-foot setback lines in that site plan. Why are we allowing them to continue to use this area for this business? There's metal containers on the property line, there's scrap next to the containers, and this residential property that borders the site is in disarray because of this. The metal containers exceed the 12-foot height limit as well. Finally included in his memorandum is this statement: the moving of the 1985 approved tree line with the utilization of the cleared space for the storage of material represents an expansion of non-conforming use. Look at picture 4 over there. Why, again, are we allowing them to continue to utilize the site for the storage of scrap here? I don't get it. Are they authorized to go beyond the law here? What message are we sending when we allow them to continue illegal operations before variances are granted? This isn't the way things are supposed to happen. I guarantee if I put a 2-story building on my site tomorrow and manufactured Christmas sweaters and was putting materials in from China, someone would be knocking on my door. Just like they knocked on my door when I had a bobcat on the lawn putting my pool in this summer. But guess what? I had all the approvals. They still knocked on my door. Why aren't you knocking on their door? I don't get it. There's laws for a reason here. Testimonies during this hearing have shown that over the past 30 years, Southard Salvage has not followed through on commitments made to the board. They were the basis for the 1985 resolution. Compare the present operation to the operation that existed in 1985. It's despicable. There's major changes there. They've expanded beyond their means. It's a substantial detriment to the public good. The intent and the purposes of the zoning ordinances have been impaired. The purpose for having zoning ordinances is to protect the homeowners, the citizens. That means the township must encourage the actions to guide the appropriate user development of all lands in a manner which will promote the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. Another important aspect is that the zoning department must attempt to conserve the value of the property. It's clear that our property values have gone down, and you can see that if you look at statements made by the tax assessor and you look at the actual comps in the area. I want to remind the board that the applicant, not the neighbors, have to prove their case for this requested variance. Based on what you heard today from so many neighbors here, it's obvious that David Zimmerman reached many conclusions that are not true. Southard Salvage disregarded the 85 resolution. That should concern the board, and it should concern any action you're going to take in this matter. By this evidence, I'm hoping you'll conclude that Southard Salvage has not proven their case for any variance request. As a resident impacted by this expansion of the non-conforming use, I submit to you that everything be denied here, all variances, and the operations cease until they provide evidence they've converted the operation back to the operation that existed in 1985. Now lastly, I'm not going to go into the noise because I think we beat it to death, but the truck traffic is despicable. My kids go on that road for a bus. I went to the Board of Ed. It took 2 years for them to move a bus stop down to the cul-de-sacs on Iverson and Stone Ridge Court. Now, you and I both know they did that because they were concerned. What's it gonna take for those trucks to hit someone? I witnessed 2 Southern Salvage truck accidents this summer, July and August. And you know what? It could be a kid. It could be an adult. It could be a dog walker. That road does not support that type of truck traffic. There are times when a business outgrows a site. And I think at this point, this business has outgrown this residential site, this residential road. I also want to add, I'm a commercial real estate broker by trade in New York and New Jersey, and I know industrial real estate. This site is not equipped for this type of traffic and this type of load on the site. Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
for you, ma'am. Unless I misheard you, beginning of your remarks, you mentioned that I believe the applicant was taking advantage of the board.
Yeah.
And I just want some clarification
Sure.
as to what you mean by, because I assume you're talking
Okay,
about.
so here's
yeah,
what I
hold
mean.
on. I assume you're talking about this board.
Well, the board that existed in 1985, up
Oh,
until
you're not
now.
talking about this board?
No.
Oh, okay.
So
Just
what,
one
I wanna know what
clarification.
happened in 1985, when this applicant applied, put together this plan, nothing got approved, and he went ahead and did it. What was the town looking at? Who was in charge then? How come this was happening?
Well, you
And how
realize-
come now, years
you-
later,
you
we're back?
realize that the Board of Adjustment does not have enforcement power.
Oh, I know, but I'm just making a point. It's like peeling back an
Just
onion.
clarification.
There were a lot of things that went wrong, and now we seem to be peeling layer after layer back and seeing all these wrong things that have done. All we're asking you is to correct it. You would do the same for a residential citizen. I don't understand why they are beyond the law and they're still operating and none of this has been corrected yet. And that's why we're here. It's been a two and a half year process. It's brutal for us too. None of us want to be here. I didn't even go home yet.
It's 3 years.
3 years.
Any other questions for me? No? Okay, thank you.
So let's see how many more. So we are considering taking a break, but that's dependent on, how many more people want to come up, just show our hands? Because if there aren't that many people, we won't take a break and just end the night. Doesn't appear that there may not be anyone. Let's just see if there's anybody.
Is there anyone else, this is the last chance, anyone else to come up for comments? Otherwise, I'm gonna close it to comments from the public.
Joe Arminio.
Can you spell your last name, please?
Arminio.
Address, please.
9 Stone Ridge Court.
Thank you.
All right, so during the past 3 years, we've heard much testimony in regard to this application on issues of traffic, site plan, noise, and activities on the site. So as I was recalling my memories of the past meetings, trying to decide what I was going to say today, I decided instead of repeating everything that everyone has said here tonight, although I agree with everything and all the negative comments, I just figured I'd bring up some facts that I've heard throughout this application that I think do really matter. And one was the fact that Mr. Southard testified when he was first on the property, there was nothing but cars there. We have an affidavit of title from Sanchez to Southard that stated the property was used for an auto salvage yard. We also heard testimony from Mr. Dawson, the guy who founded the salvage yard in the 50s, on how his procedures was going out with his tow truck, grabbing cars, bringing it back, stripping them down, then taking the chassis to Dover or Newark to scrap it. And that was done from 1950 all the way up to 1972 when it was transferred over to Sanchez. During this time, there has been no evidence produced at all that there was anything other than an auto salvage yard when the zoning laws came into effect. So auto salvage was the primary business undertaken at the salvage yard. Any other activities, including scrap metal that occurred on site, were sporadic and occasional, therefore not establishing any non-conforming use property rights. And I was doing some research, and I found out that decisional law in New Jersey, I'm not going to get into that, I'm just going to state it, does recognize a distinction in character between auto salvage yards and recycling centers. They are not substantially similar. And there's a few cases there, but I'm not a lawyer and I'm not going to get into that.
Thank
The scrap metal sorting and piling by the heavy construction equipment have increased the noise from the site substantially from which existed prior. The noise levels, while not always exceeding the state standards of 65 decibels, still represents an added inconvenience and enhanced nuisance from the perspective of the nearby residents, thus affecting our quality of life and property values. So in closing, the additional use of a full-scale scrap metal recycling operation that tears down bridges and piers and stadiums and purchases trucks full of metals by weight to the pre-existing non-conforming use is incompatible with the residentially zoned established character of single-family homes in the area. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. All right. It is now closed to the public.
We are going to, just to repeat, the hearing will now continue next year. The date being January the 19th, 2016 at 7:30 p.m. There'll be no need for further notification either to property owners within 200 feet or newspaper publication. This announcement shall serve as such notice, and to repeat, the hearing will resume with the cross-examination by Mr. Kins of Mr. Zimmerman, who is the applicant's last witness on rebuttal. And after that concludes, procedurally what happens, our counsel for both the applicant and the objector, meaning Mr. Kins, will have an opportunity to give us, the board, closing remarks. After closing remarks are made, the board in open session will deliberate and discuss the application. And once that discussion and deliberation in public takes place, motions will be made regarding approval or non-approval of the various requests, the different requests by variances and site plan approval that the applicant is seeking. So that's what is left to conclude this hearing. It probably will result in one additional meeting after January the 19th, because I don't think that everything will wrap up on January 19th. Thank you very much.